Hey guys, my name is Kelsey. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about my top 12 books of 2018. In 2018 I read a total of 68 books, including 46 adult, 20 young adult, and 2 middle grade children's books. These are all 4 or 5-star books for me, but just because they got 4 or 5 stars doesn't mean they're on the favorites list. These are just the books that stuck with me the most, that I would probably reread, just the ones that I like the best. These are in no particular order, just how I read them, starting at the beginning of the year, working my way towards the end of the year. First up is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This book is post-apocalyptic, set 20 years after a deadly flu pandemic has ended civilization as we know it. Our main character, Kirsten, travels with a group of actors and musicians performing Shakespeare plays to different settlements and colonies in the hopes of keeping art and humanity alive. The writing is beautiful, and for such a depressing topic, it is surprisingly hopeful. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is The Martian by Andy Weir. I was really late to the game on this one, but with the movie coming out, I decided I needed to read the book first. So I finally borrowed it from a friend, and it was amazing. If you don't already know, this book is about a man stranded on Mars. His crew has to leave him behind after a freak windstorm forces them to evacuate. It turns out that he survived the windstorm and has to survive on his own on Mars and find a way to communicate with Earth that he is still alive so that they can come rescue him. It's super thrilling, very intense. It takes place over a long period of time, but the main character is hilarious. It does get really technical at some points, but I found it was pretty easy to skim through all the information and still get the gist of what he was doing. The end was perfect. The movie was also really good. Of course, not as good as the book. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. The subtitle for this book is Creative Living Beyond Fear, and that's exactly what it does. It's filled with advice, anecdotes, personal stories, stories about friends, all with the intent of encouraging people to embrace creativity without the pressure of being successful or being the best at it. And I think the book does exactly that. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next is Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. This book follows a young woman, a single mom, who's kind of stuck in a rut, and one night she goes out and meets a man at a bar and has a romantic connection with him. But the following Monday, she heads into work and discovers that he is her new boss. Later that week, she's out running errands and runs into another young woman that's new to town and looking for a friend, and turns out that this woman is her boss's wife. So this book follows them over a period of time and their interactions with each other and the secrets they're hiding from each other. There is a twist ending that I did not see coming at all, and I believe this is one of Lala's at Books and Lala. It's one of her favorite thrillers of the year, and Lala knows her thrillers. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Next is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This is a nonfiction, a memoir of Trevor Noah growing up in South Africa at the end of apartheid. There's some really heavy subject matter, obviously, but Trevor Noah's voice is really lighthearted and easy to read, and he tells stories with such humor that it takes that dark subject matter, it makes it a little easier to take. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I do plan on rereading it this time via audiobook because he narrates it himself, and I have a feeling it'll just be a great experience. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This book follows Ren, an orphan. She takes an empire-wide test to see who is able to go to this elite military school. To everyone's shock, she passes and is one of the best in the nation and is able to go to this school. But when she gets there, she is discriminated against because of her skin color, her poverty, her lack of education. And that's just the first third of this book. After that, it gets super intense. This is about war. It's very violent. Trigger warnings for everything. There were a lot of twists and turns, so many things I didn't see coming. I have heard and would believe that this is a villain origin story, that our main character Ren will eventually become evil, and this sort of explains how those changes happen. I kind of hope it doesn't happen, but at the same time, I'm a sucker for a good villain, so we'll see what happens. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is a children's book, but don't let that deter you. It's super impactful. This is a story about grief and loss and coming to terms with loss. It's about a young boy who is visited at night by this monster at his window, and the monster tells him stories, and at the end of every story the monster wants this young boy to tell him the truth, but the boy doesn't know what truth this monster wants. Like I said, it's very impactful. I haven't seen the film. If you've seen the film, let me know if it's any good, because I would definitely consider checking it out. I read this in one sitting. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I actually stayed up till like 2 in the morning to finish this, even though I had to leave at 5 in the morning to get to the airport. It's just really gripping. Next up is You're Never Weird on the Internet by Felicia Day. I'm a big Felicia Day fan. If you're a nerd, you would probably like her too. Her book is just a collection of stories, memoir of her getting started, and how she got to where she is today. I listened to the audiobook, which I highly recommend because she puts her own little spin on things. Some of my favorite stories are about her going to cons, Comic-Cons, and interacting with famous people. Those are things I can seriously relate to. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. This was a highly anticipated release for me. The first book, Vicious, came out 5 years ago, so this was a long time coming. It's a sequel, so I don't want to say too much, but it does introduce new characters, including Marcella Riggins, who is a bad bitch, and it brings back some of the characters from the previous book, including, well, I don't want to give it away. Read the first book first. Vicious is one of my all-time favorite books, and this was a great follow-up. I can admit that it's not perfect. There's definitely some pacing issues, but I am a whore for Victoria Schwab, and I will read anything she writes. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Nevernight by J. Kristoff. I honestly don't know why I waited so long to get to this. I've heard great things for a long time now, and I finally picked it up. This follows our main character, Mia Corvair, as she enters this school for assassins, and seeks vengeance on the people that destroyed her family. Mia is super hardcore. She could fuck you up. Most of the characters in this book are bad people, but that only makes it more entertaining. One thing I'll say for sure is J. Kristoff knows how to write a fight scene. I'll admit that in some books I get really bored during fight scenes. I kind of skim through, there's too much information, but J. Kristoff puts just the right amount of information, enough to keep you engrossed, but not so much detail that it's overwhelming. I can't wait to pick up the second book, which I think is God's Grave, but I think I want to wait a little bit because Dark Dawn doesn't come out until the end of this year, and I have a feeling there's going to be a bit of a cliffhanger. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu. This is not my usual kind of book. It was originally a web series that I checked out because of Cece at Problems of a Book Nerd. I read the entire web series, and then the hardcover version was released, and I got it as a gift. It's a really adorable story about Biddy, a freshman hockey player at this university, and it follows him and his baking blog, where he bakes pies for his teammates, and just follows him as he navigates this new place, makes new friends, and gets a crush on the captain of the hockey team. Super adorable. Highly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. And last but not least, Autobiography by Christina Lauren. This is another one. I don't know why I waited so long to read it, because it was fantastic. I stayed up until, I don't want to admit, but probably 3 in the morning to finish it. This follows a bisexual boy that has to go back in the closet after his family moves from a liberal area in California to a small town that is primarily Mormon in Utah. This book takes place during his senior year after he enters this seminar class where every person in the class has to write a book. The TA for this class is a former student that has recently published a book, and he comes back as a mentor for the rest of the students. Immediately when the TA enters the classroom, our main character, Tanner, realizes he's got a problem because he has an overwhelming crush on their mentor. In addition to being a really adorable romance. This also deals a lot with religion. Our second main character, Sebastian, comes from a Mormon family, very religious. He plans on going on a mission. It teaches you a lot about the Mormon faith if you are not familiar, but it also talks about Sebastian's struggles with religion and his family and his sexuality. Another thing I was really impressed by in this book is the presence of family. In a lot of new adult, young adult romances, family seems to disappear, but they take a primary role in this book, especially for Tanner. His family is very supportive of him and very involved in his life. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. That's it for my top 12 books of 2018. I didn't include rereads in this list because obviously they were already favorites enough for me to want to reread them. If you want to see everything I read this year, you can check out my Goodreads. I'll leave it linked down below. And let me know in the comments if any of these were your favorite books or if you hated any of them. I promise not to hold a grudge. And if you have any recommendations based on my favorites, I'd love to hear them. If you liked this video, hit like. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. I'll see you all next week. Bye!